Welcome to Viva La Visionary, the podcast that celebrates the innovative ideas and mindsets of entrepreneurs and visionaries. Join your host, Coach Bob Shenefelt, as he dives into inspiring stories and practical insights from trailblazers who are changing the game. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned leader, this show is your source for motivation and creativity. Let's embark on this exciting journey together.
Hey there, Coach Bob, the host of Viva La Visionary, the podcast to, for, and about visionaries. Very excited to have Lewis Schiff here from Birthing a Giants. Lewis, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you, Coach Bob. Thanks for having me on here.
Awesome. I'm honored to have you on, and we have so much in common, like a lot of us visionaries when we connect do. So I'm excited to do a deeper dive. So I'd like to start with a small little question with my guest here. So Lewis, why are you on this planet? Just a little question.
Yes. No, it's a great question. It's the worldview question, right? What's your worldview? Why are you here? I am on this planet, to align my head with my heart, to align my inside with the outside world in the service of others.
Love it. Very cool. Very inspiring. I love that. And when did you first realize you were a visionary?
That is a really funny question, or a great question. So you have to understand, I was a kind of a kid entrepreneur at 16 and 17, just hustling and getting into trouble.
Right.
And I would then open a series of businesses. I sold some, and I just was like a kind of, I would call myself a rabid entrepreneur.
Right.
However, I can't say I really knew the word entrepreneur. I knew the word, but I didn't understand it. Right. I walked into Inc. magazine one day because my friend had become the editor-in-chief of Inc. and I was coming to visit him. And he walked me, you have to kind of appreciate, like, I had never read Inc. magazine or thought about it or anything. Right. And I sat down with him for an hour to chat, and he just kind of explained what Inc. magazine was. And I said, oh my gosh, this is what I've been doing for 25 years. I never knew I was an entrepreneur. Right. Which is weird because I'd sold 2 businesses at this point. My journey was underway, well underway. Right. I just had never put the word there. Now, I would then, to answer your question about when did I realize I'm a visionary, I would say then I learned the word visionary from the time I spent with the EOS community. Right. And I thought, well, that's sort of the even bigger evolution of the word entrepreneur. Right. And had the similar experience. Oh my gosh, I'm a visionary. Right. So when I realized what the word entrepreneur was and subsequently realized what the word visionary was, I realized and continue to realize that this is sort of it's like when they give you a title, like if they make you the principal of a school, yes, it's a job title, it's got responsibilities, but it also has meaning. Principals in schools are important people. Right. They're leaders, kids look up. So when you become a visionary, and you say that's the word that best describes me, I think you have to have the maturity and other things to be able to say, I'm actually prepared to represent myself to the world as a visionary. I'm mature enough. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to take it seriously. I'm not going to just call myself that and think that's the end of it. Right. So I continue to figure out now, even still, like, what does that word mean? What does it mean mostly in terms of my responsibility to others, which could be the people who work with me, for me, my clients, but even the larger world. Right. It's a big word.
No, and I appreciate that. Gino was I sold Gino's first EOS client 21 years ago. I was his third client. And when I took him on and he took me on, I was like, I can sell, I can inspire, I like to have fun, but who am I to run a business? And he's like, well, you're a visionary. I'm like, okay, I get that. And I started to learn what that was. And he says, absolutely, there's a role for you in business. I'm like, yeah, but I suck at managing. I'm not good at details. Short attention span. He's like, yeah, and we need you in a business. We just need an integrator and structure. So he literally changed my life to help me to realize I used to avoid structure like the plague, because I like to wing it and be spontaneous. But he was like, hey, if you have structure around what matters most and who matters most, we have more time for that creativity and spontaneity within that. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say sometimes, just like you just did, Bob, people will say, I'm a visionary because I can't do this, this, and this. Right. So that's sort of like I'm a visionary because I'm not a that, and that. Right. And I think it's more like you're a visionary, which means you have all this vested responsibility. Right. But you're right. I mean, sometimes I think about the negative qualities that a lot of entrepreneurs have. So I think of words like narcissism and delusions of grandeur and hypomania and ADHD. But I think part of the concept of our journey as visionaries is to say, actually, those are all positives.
For sure. Right.
You know?
But we've learned that those aren't good or been taught that. And so, and again, and that's that chatter that's in a lot of our heads. And so, like, to your point, there's the visionary journey. So there's, you know, I know I'm meant to do something. I see an issue or a problem. I help the client understand it. I sell them. Woohoo! Now I have to deliver. Holy shit. So that's when then we then put business systems in place. Okay, that's cool. And then often the visionary is like, well, what do I do now? And what, as you know, is what we're here to do is to say, it's not what you're here to do. It's who are you here to be and who are you? And so I love that. So very cool. And what do you think, what's your definition? What is your perception of our role or your role as a visionary? What do we?
Right. Well, I would say it's to launch, build, invent, reimagine without fear of the consequence. Okay.
Love.
I mean, most people think, you want to go in business to get rich. I would say it's more like I want to go into business. Well, actually, I can tell you for sure why I'm in business, but I want to go into business where I'm going to try to do things. Maybe they've been done before. Maybe they've never been done in my neighborhood. Who knows? But the consequence could be success, could be failure. I'm actually a very hard worker. So the most common consequence of my efforts is a middling outcome, meaning like I work hard enough that I could even make a bad idea pretty okay.
Right. I love it.
But, I've only had a couple of like grand slams in my life, but I've had a lot of middling because I'm a hard worker.
Right.
And so what's the outcome? It's sometimes it's huge success. Sometimes it's huge failure. I've had those. And sometimes it's middling. But you're supposed to invent and conceive and create, irrespective of that.
Right.
Just go for it. Just go for it. Right. And at the end of the day, if you feel like you did a great job and maybe the world didn't see it the way you saw it and it didn't work out, that's fine.
Yep.
You went for it. That's the important thing.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. So tell me, and I wore my Princeton gear today because we have that in common. So I want to hear a little bit more about Birthing of Giants, but you've moved Birthing of Giants to Princeton, and my son's a freshman there, and just that energy and vibe of Princeton. I looked to my wife. I'm like, I want to move here. I mean, it's just such a bubble of learning and whatnot. So I'm excited that my son is there, and that's cool. But so tell me a little bit more about, and again, one last thing would be, I did Birthing of Giants. I graduated in 2000, so I'm dating myself, and that was a previous ownership when it was at MIT, and I got a lot out of it. But so explain to me and the listeners, what is Birthing of Giants?
Okay, so Birthing of Giants, basically, it acknowledges that your typical business owner who reaches what I'll call pre-scale, this is going to sound funny, but like 5 million to 500 million. Now, some of that's not pre-scale, but in other words, they're clearly past market validation. They can deliver something, they can make a profit, but they have this quality that they can't get past, which is, we call it a high performance, cheap labor model, meaning they do well. They do 25 million, 50 million revenue, but they tend to hire what I'm calling cheap labor, people who, don't get paid as much as they would be paid if they worked at Google or Goldman Sachs. But we as entrepreneurs fill in for all their weaknesses and all their gaps by hustling constantly.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you're not awesome good, but I get it. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. And so, it's definitely a credit to that entrepreneur who's so versatile and so passionate that they'll take out the trash and they'll make the big service calls. They'll do whatever they got to do. The problem is, so Birthing of Giants exists for that person who has reached, again, millions of dollars of revenue, but they will not get past that point until they reconsider and reinvent their value proposition for scale.
Love it.
So they should feel incredibly proud. They can walk around their community. They can probably be, they're certainly successful people. They have money. They have the nice car and all that. They might even be very important philanthropically to their community. I mean, by every measure, they're a success. But what I'm saying to that person is, you will never get past the level you're at currently unless you reinvent your value proposition for scale. So you're going to have a business model that has economies of scale, that has a mechanism to hire incredibly talented people, those top 5 or 10 people who help you run your company. I mean, you could almost figure out if you're in this category by saying, well, who are the top half a dozen people that help me run this business? Are they the very people that any large company would hire to do the job I'm asking them to do? Or are they loyal, wonderful, hardworking, passionate, but probably not the people who would have been hired by an Amazon or a Google or a Goldman Sachs to do that work?
Right.
And then the question becomes why? Well, the answer is you don't have that $1 million or $2 million for senior level management.
Right.
So all of the reinvention comes from, how are you going to build a business that someone will buy one day for $100 million if you can't demonstrate that it can scale and afford a serious management program?
Right. Oh, I love that.
Does that make sense?
Oh, no, totally. I love, this may or may not apply, but I'm a big fan of Dan Sullivan, went through his program for 6 years, and his book 10X is easier than 2X. And that's so true. I mean, 10X is to me kind of easy, but the 2X, and that doesn't mean I'm not always in 10X. I'm often in 2X for whatever reason, and that sucks. Again, to get to the 10X, and then even within a structure like EOS, we tell people, all right, so you have your leadership team, and do they get it, want it, and have the capacity for the seats that we need? And we tell people for every 5 to 7 people who start in 2 years, there's going to be 1 to 3 that aren't going to be at this table.
For
and
sure.
They're not going to be in the company. But again, it's like, okay, well, we'll take you, you, and you. But as we really realize who we need, the who's, then it's like, okay, now we start to bring in people who are better at it than we are. So, yeah, I know we visionaries jump in because, unfortunately, we're probably better than some of our employees, and that's not the right answer.
Right. And so there's sort of a 3-part story that we tell. One is the opportunity for you as a business owner is huge. I mean, it's virtually limitless. The kind of, if money is your goal, the kind of money that will change your life, your children's life, your grandchildren's life.
Right.
That's the opportunity. Now, the obstacle, believe it or not, is you. Because you have built this business to this point on a high performance, cheap labor model by filling in for everyone's weaknesses, you're never going to have the space to reinvent your value prop. We have a kind of a funny phrase we use, which is, it's very hard to offer swimming lessons to somebody who's drowning.
Right.
But that's in fact what they need, right?
Yeah.
And so the solution to your lack of focus is value proposition reinvention. And that's a big set of business words. You know, what the heck does it mean? Value proposition reinvention. We've actually distilled value proposition reinvention to a process. So I don't care if you're a services business, a product business, a government contractor, serve consumers, it doesn't matter. We have built a process for value proposition reinvention where at the end of it, you can decide if you want to go big, small, medium, and large, but you will have a plan to reinvent your value proposition that allows you to get out of the high performance, cheap labor circle.
Right.
Which again is deceiving because by every measure you are a success. It's just exhausting.
And again, there's what I teach when I'm coaching. It's what's your definition? What's my definition of success? And if it's just money, okay, that's great. If it's just things, that's great. But is it relationships and marriage and kids and hobbies and giving back and whatnot? So I think that's a fascinating, to help people to understand what is success to you. And I mean, for me, I realized, freedom is a huge part of of my definition, which often are like, okay, well, the more money I have, the more free I can be. But to me, it's also, that I love what I'm doing. I'm adding impact, helping others to create their own communities, so somewhat similar. But yeah. So
are you familiar with the Japanese concept of ikigai?
Let's pretend I don't. I know I've heard it, but.
Well, it's a nexus between what's your passion, how do you make money, what does the world need, and what are you good at? Right. So imagine the intersection of those 4 things. What's your passion? What does the world need? What can you make money at? And what are you good at? Right. And that's a Japanese word, ikigai. That the more time you spend in ikigai, the happier, the better everything, the more maximized you are. And
it's fulfillment and deep joy, not just happy. I mean, again, I've gone through life being happy, but deep down, have I always
believe that about you?
Joyful. I appreciate that. All right, and then what's one lesson you've learned as a visionary? It could be personal or professional. That it's like, wow, that was a tipping point that shifted the trajectory of my life. So that you could share to say, wow, I'm so glad I either did this, implemented that, got rid of this. What's a lesson learned you've learned as a visionary?
Well, as a visionary, I think I'm not a concise person. So I'm going to give you a long answer to a short question. Life is about intersections. So the Ikigai one I just shared with you, and that's not a bad one for me. But at the beginning of this conversation, I talked about my head and my heart being aligned, my inside life being aligned with the outside world in service of the planet. I think intersections are the most important things, where you're doing things that help you and help others. So the thing I've learned about being a visionary is that the world absolutely needs us. I mean, they need us, and we are not integrators, and we're not good at the details, as you said, but the world needs us. And why do they need us? Really, visionaries are needed because I'm going to use a word and I want to define it. Okay. Right. I'm a progressive. And what I mean by the word progressive is I believe in progress.
Right. Yeah.
I know it's a loaded word now, but I believe in progress. So there's a lot of things wrong with the world. Actually, we'll quote a progressive, Bill Clinton. He said, "There's nothing wrong with the world that can't be fixed with what's right with the world."
Love it. Yep.
And so, we've got tons of things that could be better, but of course, every solution creates a new kind of problem. And then we have to solve that with a new solution. So I get to work in places like Oxford University and places like Princeton, and there's places where deep thinking takes place and innovation takes place. I'm surrounded by visionaries.
Right.
And I know that every one of them is making progress in the world. We're all progressives,
Right. Love it.
And so I think we that this group of us, right? You, me, all these people, we all bump into each other along the road, believe in making things better than they are through invention, reinvention, taking chances, being willing to fail. I love our group of people who do that.
Right.
I love the people who help us do it, but I love our group the most that does it.
Totally, right. It makes, and I used to feel like I was alone. And so to realize, there's other people like me, and it can help shorten the learning curve, and I can have fun. And it's, when I throw out an idea, there's so many people that are like, yeah, but what about all these things? I'm like, well, that might be true, but can we dream for a minute? And then we can help each other. I mean, as you know, in the Visionary Forum, we talk about we network for each other, not to each other. And I may not be able to solve your issue or problem, but I probably know someone who does, and vice versa. So to be with other peers is amazing. I love that.
Yeah. And I also think, I suppose if I really, really reduced everything, I would say self-discovery is the ultimate goal, right? Not money, not even happiness. Yep. I would say, I'm going to work for 50 years. I don't know. I started working when I was very young. I'm going to work for 50 years. By the end of that 50 years, I hope I know myself really well. I know myself pretty well now. But I want to know myself really well. And I don't really care what kind of car I drive or anything like that. I just want to know as much about myself, because you and I and so many people have this enormous opportunity to try and figure out what we're good at and what we're bad at. I mean, lots of times in history and lots of cultures, nobody would say, "Hey, what do you want to be? What are you good at?" Right. Nobody would do that. Right. So we've been asked that question, or we've asked ourselves that question. And I would like to have the best answer possible. I know what I want to be. I know who I am. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm bad at. I just want to know myself better. And
to me, I love that answer. And as I'm in that space, I'm elevated and in a higher consciousness. And then I'm actually more productive and not working, but just being. And that's amazing. I love that.
It's amazing.
So what's one thing that you're working on now, or an opportunity as a visionary, that it's like, hey, this is something either with myself or with my business that you're contemplating, you're making moves on?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is, I'm definitely not going to give you the full answer on that, but I will say, generally speaking, if you know anything about the publicly traded stock markets, up until about 20 years ago, it was I cut my teeth in a place called Silicon Alley, which is in New York City, which was sort of our version of Silicon Valley. And everybody went public. That was automatic in the 1990s. If you go public, you were an idiot. And so I was part of two things that went public, and it was pretty fun. But it was chaotic and crazy. And if you really drill down on why companies go public, the reasons kind of don't exist anymore. Don't. So now I'm part of all this amazing private company, wealth creation and value creation. I am working hard with some very smart people to figure out what is the private equivalent to going public. How do you create liquidity in your plumbing company or in your cybersecurity company? What does liquidity look like? Then you get into some words that half of us think are amazing and half of us think are silly, which is words like blockchain
Right.
You know,
Right.
and I think I'm actually on the silly side, but you know, there is, if you start to look at what the blockchain is and you start to compare it to what the publicly traded stock markets are, they do have things in common. And you'd say, well, I know people who run cement contracting businesses and plumbing businesses and cybersecurity, and they're all making money, which we call profit, but the full impact of their business through value proposition reinvention is going to be liquidity.
Right.
Liquidity. And so I think I'm working with a lot of people who are like, what does liquidity look like for our private businesses? I know that every once in a while we sell our business. You might sell it for a lot of money. But if you think of the friction in that process of selling your business,
A lot of work.
I mean, it's a lot of work. It can go right. It can go wrong. We need a better way to get liquid.
Huh. I love that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm excited to be a part of that journey with you because that's very intriguing. Because, yeah, I mean, the world has changed. I think this is the greatest time ever to be alive. And I know we've hit the ceiling of complexity as a society, but to me, that's our time to shine. To say, okay, let's reinvent some of the bureaucracies that don't work anymore, and let's help others to even understand what is vision. And that's our employees and our kids, and they may not be visionaries, and that's fine. But it's like, let's reinvent ourselves because it's a new world. I think it's amazing.
And if you take the visionary class and you say, you know, you got not young kids, you have young adult kids, and I have young adult kids, and we say, you know, I have this idea that there could be this profession called entrepreneur, right? Which is not like well, nobody else wanted me, so I became an entrepreneur kind of story. It'll be more like, well, this person is well suited to be an entrepreneur. Here's what they should do over the next 25 years to do it. Like you'd say to someone who exits from law school or medical school, a journey and a path. And I believe that there's a path where you could be the person who goes from 0 to 10 million or 25 million and then go liquid and then go back and start it again and start it again. And reasonably in a career, you could do that 3 to 5 times.
Right.
And you should stop at some point and hand the company off to the next person. But you got to find liquidity. There's got to be, things have to become cash.
Right.
So it sounds like a little technical, but if you take that journey and it doesn't really end with the proper liquidity event, then it hasn't worked.
Right.
So how do we send you back and say, go do it again? Can't.
Right. That's awesome.
You got to unlock that.
So are there any schools or classes out there for the younger generation? And I've heard about it, but I mean, that teach entrepreneurship? I mean, because I haven't looked into that. I mean, is that taught, or is that, because people ask, you know, where did you learn how to run business? I'm like, by hard knocks from other entrepreneurs through EOS, but is there other things for our kids to learn what it even means to be an entrepreneur?
Well, it's a fair question. I teach undergraduates, you know, out in New Jersey, and here's what I know about them. They are creatures of social media. I don't mean to sound like a boomer, but they're creatures of social media, and they've been fed a steady diet of, you know, I just bought a new car, I'm on my beach vacation, look at me with my girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever. It's just this constant parade of, isn't my life great? Right. And it has turned almost everyone of that age into people who say, I cannot risk failure because everyone around me seems to be doing so well. I can't be the one who fails. Now, we know they're not all doing well. We know that social media is wildly two-dimensional.
Yes.
But when I'm in a school with I'm in a classroom with 20 or so 20-year-olds, and we're talking about entrepreneurship, they are paralyzed by the prospect of failure, which is not a healthy attitude towards entrepreneurship. Right. So how do we teach past that? But if I push that whole thing aside, believe it or not, I think this liquidity thing I'm kind of babbling on about is important, because here's a funny thing in a school, okay? If your parents are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for you to attend a school, and you chose entrepreneurship as your path, and you say to your parents, I want to be an entrepreneur, I'm studying entrepreneurship, and the parents say, well, what kind of job is that going to get you after I've spent $250,000? And you say, I don't know. It's not a good answer. And so you may not have the support of the parents. So we need to teach how this thing becomes an actual cycle with a liquidity at the end.
Well, it's interesting. And my kids, so my daughter was going to be a mechanical engineer, and she has that brain. She's brilliant at it. And then she decided after 3 years to be an elementary school teacher. And again, with my book sitting on the table where I tell people to go for it and whatnot, I literally had the chatter in my head to say, well, just suffer through the next 10 years. And then you can do and be whatever you want. And she's so passionate. But of course, my entrepreneur brain is like, how can she change education? And she's kind of like, okay, I just want the 20 kids in my class. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But she's such a great teacher, and she makes it fun and connects with them. And she's had student teachers that she's been following that don't even like kids. And it's like, okay, that's not a recipe for
those were all my teachers. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right. And then Nick, my son, who again, he aspires to be a major leaguer. We know that's a long shot, and he totally knows that's a long shot. And he's used baseball to get into Princeton and to get other things, which is amazing. But of course, I'm like, okay, so what about coaching, or how can you, inspire and discipline and whatnot? He's like, dude, I just want to play baseball. So, I'm encouraging, and if they don't do it, that's fine. But it's just fun to get them to start to think differently.
Well, for your son who's a baseball or an athlete, I will say, one of the amazing things about choosing that athletic route is I do wish him well. I wish him, he's the shortstop for the Yankees one day.
Right.
But if it doesn't happen, he'll have to do what a lot of athletes have to do, which is they'll hit a ceiling of their abilities relatively young.
Yep.
And then they'll have to reinvent. Yep. And in fact, it is the skill of reinvention that almost ensures your success over time.
Right.
And I would argue that success for your son is not necessarily getting into the MLB. It's successfully reinventing.
Totally.
And then successfully reinventing again.
Right. Well, and for him, he was a very good athlete. He needed more speed. So he was very disciplined, got his speed where it needs to be. So then D1 would look at him. So he's using that discipline. He studied about 5 minutes in high school. Then he went to Princeton and he's studying, 2 hours a day. And yet he was like, I can do this. And it's kind of fun to learn if I know the why behind it. A lot of times it's just study, you take a test, and it's like, why do we even do this? So yeah, it's nice to have good teachers, that's for sure.
Yeah,
all right. Well, awesome. So our rally cry is Viva La Visionary, and the name of the podcast. What does Viva La Visionary mean to you, Lewis?
I think we are the agents of progress. I think every good thing that's going to happen in the world, and probably every bad thing that's going to happen in the world, has probably got a visionary behind it.
Right.
But I think, we move too fast as a society to stop and think about what has changed in our lifetimes, yours and mine, Coach Bob. Yep. I just use this kind of grave example, but heart attacks were what killed everybody, right? Now, heart attacks don't kill as many people. I mean, just think about that. The ability for you to get yourself into an ambulance where they'll put some machinery on you and keep you alive long enough to put you under surgery has, just in the course of our lifetimes, the thing that killed most people in our milieu here has been reduced. So that's all. There's a ton of innovators and visionaries in that journey who made that happen. And any other field you can think of, something similar is happening. Right. And so that's progress. And so I think, the quality of our lives right now is fantastic because of visionaries. Right. And the quality of our lives will be better in the future because of visionaries.
Right. I love it. And I love the line. I think I got it from Homer Simpson, but we visionaries are the cause of and cure of all of life's problems. So
100%.
So I'll give you that to, I think Homer talked about, brown alcohol, it's the cause of and solution to all life's problems. So I tweaked it like we visionaries like to do. Right. All right. Anything else you'd like to add? Comments, thoughts, questions? This has been great.
Well, no, I appreciate that opportunity. I would say, because you've been a wonderful supporter of the Birthing a Giants program and journey, is that not every entrepreneur has to want to go through value proposition reinvention, but it is sort of like the next cool thing to do. It's the next hard thing to do. And so I literally had an email conversation with someone yesterday who chose not to apply for Birthing a Giants because their bookkeeping system needed a lot of work. And I said, I get it. Of course, if your bookkeeping system is crashing and burning, it's all you can think about. Right. On the other hand, all your visionary goals are going to be something much bigger than that. Right. So how do we get you there? Again, how do you offer swimming lessons to someone who's drowning? I really do want to save visionaries and entrepreneurs who are caught up in the kinds of things that exhaust them to get them focused on the possibilities of being really, really progress oriented.
Right. No, I love that. And I know for me, when I'm expansive and my consciousness is elevated, I am so clear, so confident and committed to that. That's amazing. When I'm in the shit and in the weeds and drowning, I'm terrible to live with and work with. And so I applaud what you're doing and support it wholeheartedly. So, all right, well, Lewis, appreciate your time, appreciate your wisdom, appreciate your friendship, and we will talk again soon.
Great.
All right, thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks, Coach Bob.
Thank you for tuning in to Viva La Visionary. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found inspiration in our guest stories. If you loved what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and share the podcast with fellow dreamers and doers. Join us next time as we continue to explore the limitless possibilities of visionary thinking. Until then, keep dreaming big and taking action. Your vision matters.